So, Keith, coming up on Friday, 2 Hour Dateline, Killings in a College Town airs on NBC. Of course, this is the case that the whole country seems to be focused on. What
Yeah.
did you learn as you've spent the past few weeks putting this together?
Well, just a small aside before I go there. What is it about Idaho, Nate?
Right?
We seem to be going back there for famous cases all the time.
I know. I know. And
Yeah.
well, the Daybell trial coming up here in a few months. So hopefully you're back for
Yeah.
that.
Without question. Without question.
Yeah.
This was gosh, it was a terrible case. I mean, a terrible thing that happened, and certainly a mystery that was tailor-made for mystery stories. But it caught the world's attention as much as it did was a bit of a surprise to me, actually.
Yeah. So the special delves into a few different angles. Of course, you've got the suspect who was in court this morning. Very short court appearance. You actually spoke with someone who went to school with him. Her name's Madison. What did she tell you?
We spoke to a couple of people who went to school with him, and there are some stories about his time in school which suggest that early on, far back as middle school, he was an overweight kid and was bullied, teased a lot, I think, about his weight, and generally bullied by other kids, even girls, maybe especially girls. And later, as he got into high school, he developed a bit of a drug problem, but he also slimmed down so that by the time he graduated got his GED, we think, at the end of high school and started into college, he was much thinner. He was looking much, much better. And his former schoolmates were quite impressed with that and certainly amazed to hear what happened here.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that. No one ever thinks that someone they go to school with is going to be charged with murder, especially
Right.
such a horrific, quadruple murder.
Truly.
Did any of them say, actually, yeah, he kind of showed signs, or were they all kind of caught off guard?
You have a tendency to look back and see with new eyes when something like this happens. And so those who have known him in the past have told us that they did notice that he had trouble in social situations, that there was no talk of any, romantic entanglements at all. But one young woman who went to a wedding with him, for example, she spoke with him. They had been, friends since middle school, but he didn't speak to anybody else in the wedding party anywhere at all for the entire evening. So she got the impression that he was somebody who was very uncomfortable in crowds, and she had known him as someone who, was more comfortable on his own, quietly.
Then we've got, of course, the families of the poor victims who were,
Right.
their lives were taken so short. You talk about them, you interview those that were close to them. Anything stick out to you about, the victims and these families who waited weeks and weeks to see if there'd be a break in this case?
Sure. And some of the families that elected not to talk to the media, and perfectly understandable. Those who did, Kaylee Goncalves' parents were kind of regular contributors to the story, and they were frustrated, and they let it be known that they wanted this investigation to move on, or the police to say something, and they suspected they weren't doing anything. And in the end, I think they're happy is the wrong word to use, but they feel things are going finally in the right direction. And it was a very, very interesting investigation. There was so much speculation that was wildly off base. It continues to be a lot of speculation that isn't, not even close to what the reality is. But the real facts of the investigation read like a detective fiction. What went on and what they finally discovered and how it all kind of led to the final conclusion makes for gripping reading.
You mentioned all the speculation and all the flat out inaccuracies that are out there. And I remember we talked about Daybell a few minutes ago. It was 3 years ago that we were in Hawaii before Lori, 3 years ago this month, before Lori was being arrested. And that's the first time I really saw social media kind of explode and the online sleuths kind of go after this. Yep. But in this case, in the Idaho Moscow cases, it seems to really have gone up a whole nother level.
It has. I've never seen it. Well, it's a developing technology, and I guess we have to expect that to happen. But somebody's got to maybe think about being responsible here for a minute or two.
Well, I want to play a quick soundbite. You spoke with a woman named Martha, a U of I student. She was friends with Ethan and Xana Kernodle, and she talks about these people on TikTok and Facebook that just went wild with it.
One of the things that made it the toughest was the TikTok sleuths.
The TikTok sleuths?
The independent TikTok sleuths and the people who made out the people that I love and know into monsters online. There was some really awful things written on the internet.
Get a real life lesson on how cruel the internet can be.
Yeah, and it went through all parts of our campus. Every digital footprint, every Venmo transaction, everything.
Any of your friends in particular get hurt or hit by this stuff?
Yeah. And it was odd because you'd be with people that you're literally like actively grieving with, and then you'd like open Facebook or you'd open TikTok, and then it would be why the person sitting next to you is the one that did it.
So, Keith, when we talk about that and about the explosion of social media, in a lot of these cases, they actually help. They can help.
Well, yes. And there have been cases, we've done some familial DNA cases, for example, where, the social media people kind of get together in a chain, or like bees in a hive, and each of them works on one little aspect of a mystery to try to come up with the person the police are trying to identify. And it's been very helpful. But that has to be kind of, orchestrated and controlled to some degree, and they need to be living in the real world. The problem with these fantasies that we're getting out online and really harming people in ways that'll affect them for the rest of their lives. Those kinds of things are just, that's just damaging. It's just not good behavior at all. There are people who still are being threatened virtually every day, because in spite of the fact that they've arrested a man and charged him with the crime, other people the internet had identified as killers are still out there, still getting threats.
Yeah.
Why exactly? I don't know.
Read an article about that just this morning. And actually, there's lawsuits being filed against some of these people on social media. So we've talked several times in the past, Keith, about the true crime obsession, it seems, that people have with this. And I keep wondering if it's reached its peak. Do you think it has? I mean,
the last time you asked me, I thought, well, it must be reaching its peak.
Right. Yeah.
It apparently isn't. I don't know what it is about the way the world is now, but true crime is people's way of, I don't know, coping with things the way they are. I'm not sure what it is or why, but it doesn't show any signs of abating.
Well, the nice thing about Dateline is that it is responsible journalism, well-researched. There's, ethics, that legals and standards versus some of the other productions that you don't know what they say or what they're going to say. So this is the story that has gripped the nation. Again, it airs Friday night, Killings in a College Town on NBC. Here in Idaho, it airs at 8:00, but on the West and the East, it airs at 9. Keith, thank you very much.
Thank you. It's good to be with you again, Nate.
Good to see you.